Is hell real? And when I speak of hell, I'm speaking it in the classical understanding of hell. That is a place after death where the wicked are tormented forever and ever. I'm speaking of that place called hell. Is hell real? And the answer is yes, of course it is real. It is the teaching of the Bible, both Old and New Testament. Jesus himself taught it. It is part of the belief of the Christian church from the very beginning. And yet, if you do not believe in hell, listen to me, you set yourself up as a heretic, pure and simple, because you're denying one of the fundamental doctrines of Christianity. So there are different religions that pretend to be Christian that deny hell. Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses are two of the main ones that we think about. They both agree that there is no hell for human beings. Then there's the Seventh-day Adventists that also deny hell. And because of that denial of hell, we cannot believe them to be part of the Christian church. And of course, there are some more liberal denominations where they are kind of redefining Christianity in their own liberal, unorthodox way. And many of them are coming to deny the existence of hell. Then there's independent organizations and ministers like Tim Mackie, who is the president of the Bible Project. And it's a creative, animated way to try to explain the Bible. But unfortunately, Tim Mackie is trying to lead people into this unorthodox idea that hell doesn't exist. Then you have people like Ken Arrington, who calls himself a Christian historian, who redefines all the words to try to flip and confuse the average person to make them think that hell is simply not a belief of Christians, yet it is. So hell is a fundamental doctrine. Paul writes in Hebrews chapter 6, and he mentions 6 foundational doctrines that is essential to believe in. And one of those doctrines is eternal judgment. This is important. This is what we Christians have believed, that when God judges, it's eternal. That is, it will determine a person's eternal destiny. And that is one of the fundamental doctrines of Christianity, is eternal judgment. My youngest son asked, "Dad, what is it that Christians really have to believe in order to be saved?" And I simply said, the Apostles' Creed. If someone denies that, they are putting themselves outside of Orthodox Christianity, and they're making themselves to be heretics. So we ought to believe everything that the Apostles' Creed says, and of course, what Jesus taught. Listen to what Jesus teaches here in Matthew 25. He speaks about the sheep and the goats, that on the final judgment, he will separate the sheep from the goats, and he will say to the goats, verse 41, then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels." So the first thing we have to recognize is God created hell. Mankind did not create it. And why did God create it? He created it for who? The devil and his angels. That means hell is not on earth. People will often say, well, the hell I believe in is the problems we go through on earth. Listen to me. Hell is going to be so much greater than any problems you face on earth. You understand this? So Jesus says God made it. He prepared it, but he initially prepared it for Satan and his angels because they were the first ones to fall. But according to Jesus, the goats, which are pretend Christians, those who claim to be Christians but are not, he says they're going to go into the eternal fire with Satan and his angels. And notice Jesus called this judgment eternal. And so today you have people say, I just don't believe in eternal judgment. I just don't believe it's true. That's not what Jesus taught. Jesus said in Matthew 10, do not be afraid of man who can destroy the body. They can kill the body, but be afraid of him who can destroy both soul and body into hell. Notice what Jesus says. He's showing there's temporal punishment that human beings can level. They can kill you, but all they can do is kill your body. They cannot destroy your soul. But Jesus warns us of a God who can destroy both soul and body into hell. Again, this is the teaching of Jesus Christ. Some of you don't like it. Well, I'm sorry you don't like it. Take it up with your Savior because he's the one that taught it. And for you to deny it is for you to deny one of the fundamental truths of Christianity. This is why it is so important that we affirm what the Bible teaches. Hell is real. Now, somebody might say, I just can't believe. Why would God make hell? I don't get it. He just told you for the devil and his angels. Why? Because they're eternal, immortal beings. They can never die. So why did God create hell? Well, let me ask you, why did governments create prison? For two reasons. To keep the convicts from hurting any others, but also for punishment. Isn't that right? The two reasons. To keep people from hurting others and for punishment. God created hell for the same reason. Because we human beings are eternal souls. That is, our soul cannot die in that sense. You understand? It's going to live on forever. If God allowed the wicked and the unsaved to continue to live forever, they would then destroy God's beautiful new world. So God has to incarcerate them and put them in a spiritual prison, a spiritual dungeon. But also, hell is for punishment. And people say, I don't get it. Why should my sin experience eternal punishment? Because sin is against God, who is an eternal being. You understand? So if you, for example, lied to your children, what kind of punishment would you get? Very little. If you lied to your wife, that's a higher line. You might get an earful, right? If you lied to a police officer, you're not doing very good. But listen to me. If you lie with your hand swore before a court, before a judge, then the punishment is greater. In other words, it's the same lying, but the higher you go, the greater the accountability and punishment. Do you understand? Sin is against God. If it was against human beings, it would be temporal punishment. But it's against God. And because it's against God, there must be eternal consequences. So God created hell for two reasons. To keep the wicked from destroying God's good world by incarcerating them in a spiritual prison called hell. But he also created hell to punish people for the rejection of God and their sinning to an eternal God. Hell is real. Anyone who doesn't teach it and believes in it is risking their own spiritual salvation.